That's James's deck dinner. I just put crock pot pulled pork seasoning with some black beans, spinach, potatoes, and tomatoes, and a little bit of cider vinegar. And that's it. And then he's having some tiramisu with strawberries and mangoes.
Oh, you forgot to mention the side.
Oh, the rosemary focaccia.
Focaccia, I'm looking forward to that.
Venum, Let There Be Carnage is what I'm going to be talking about. And then Fatherhood. And
then if there's time.
Oh, yeah, you're getting back to that
after America, Uncle Sam, on a table in a morgue, presumably. Mark Stein. He's a Canadian, actually, but he seems to, I think he's Canadian in origin. And not very Canadian when it comes to traditions. And in some ways that's quite bad.
So at the end of this Venum, there's a little reminder of the the Spider-Man guy. And
so
honestly,
this is a Marvel? You're mentioning
some sort
Spider-Man.
Of a superhero thing.
So
it's
related
Marvel.
to Spider-Man.
So anyway, while I was watching this, I was like, oh, they kind of ripped off that Spider-Man idea where there was a bad Spider-Man there for a while or whatever. And I was like, how lame.
The black suit took Spider-Man over.
But luckily they got Woody Harrelson to play the character in this. That's the bad guy. And
takes after his dad when he doesn't take after him, which like he's channeling his dad. His dad was a murderer.
So anyway, it was full of action, adventure, enough comedy to keep a person interested, and the special effects were great. So top of the stack. But I only have 2 movies, and this one, James likes Kevin Hart a lot. I don't really find him funny, but
I like it reasonably well.
So Fatherhood was really boring. Honestly, like it starts out with a funeral, and you're like, okay, well, if it starts out with a funeral, it's going to end up happy, whatever. Who cares?
With a marriage.
And yeah. So honestly, it's about fatherhood, as you would guess. And there's some mildly humorous stuff in here, but not nearly as much as I'd hoped for. Honestly, I found more humor in this than this. I expected more, and I'm not really a fan of Kevin Hart, like James is. But anyway, on to you. That's all I have.
This pulled pork seasoning, it got you sniffling.
Oh yeah, it's hot.
Yeah.
Like
so if you see my hat kind of head towards the moon,
yeah,
the top of my head.
It's made by the brand Crock-Pot, and it has good flavor. And there's enough there to feed a large family, actually, not just, it says for one family meal or whatever, and it's like, well, there's a lot of seasoning there. But they say add ketchup, cider vinegar, and I think brown sugar or something, and I didn't add the sugar, and I didn't add the ketchup, so we're missing out on that sweet, which, like, if a key to making a good chili is add some brown sugar to it, and you can get a lot of heat there as long as you add the sweet, and it works out. And I'm pretty sure that if I added the sweet like they directed on the package, then this would be awesome. It's just really hot without the sweet. And I'd added diced tomatoes instead of ketchup, and I don't know if that really works out that well. But the flavor's good. It's a good spice mix, I think. Anyway, that's all I got.
So I'll continue with what I was doing. So Mark Stein is not that bright. They got a good picture of him. He tends to be overweight. It's funny, he's phobic about fat. He's fat phobic. No, he's fat phobic. But you'd never guess that he was overweight from that picture, right? Well, not really. And sometimes he's seriously overweight. But at any rate, so overall, I disagree with him, but, I disagree with so many of the people he criticizes as well. My attitude is a plague on all your houses. So here he's talking about, there's all sorts of people been talking about how Donald Trump is a liar, and he is. And it's not just when he's calling fake news, he just lies. It's almost like he does it for practice sometimes, maybe a lot of the time. So here's Senator Kerry. So he ran for the president, I think against George Bush Jr. When was that, 2004? Senator Kerry is so wedded to truth and facts, and both of those are in what English people call inverted commas, otherwise known as quotation mark. Truth and facts that, like his fellow Massachusetts patrician Ted Kennedy, the youngest of the Kennedy brothers, he spent the Bush years, that would be the Bush Jr. years, disseminating a fake Thomas Jefferson quote. I don't know if it's fake or not. This was put out before Donald Trump. Before Donald Trump became president, before he stole the presidency. A fake Thomas Jefferson quote, "Dissent is the highest form of patriotism." So that sounds like something that might have been made up in the 60s. Incidentally, if you hear something in the background,
that's not our dogs.
It's not our dogs, and we don't have a neighbor who tortures dogs. It's just a dog that's a little bit exercised sometimes when he gets excited. So
that dog always sounds like that.
Yeah, it's scary. The first time I heard it.
Yeah, the first time I heard it too, I was like, I
wanted to head out west and, get a vigilante committee together to string the owner up for torturing the dog. I'm joking. Anyway, some of you folks out there looking for a good witch hunt. Leave me alone, okay? A fake Thomas Jefferson quote, "Dissent is the highest form of patriotism." Dissent is a form of patriotism, patriotism, but I don't know if it's the highest form. Rebellion, I don't think is, and revolution, in almost all cases, is a devolution. Barack Obama is so smart he had a fake Martin Luther King quote. And holy smokes, Martin Luther King, Thomas Jefferson, he might have died roughly 200 years ago. So if you get a quote wrong, okay. But Barack Obama might have been alive when Martin Luther King was alive. A fake Martin Luther King quote sewn into the Oval Office carpet. That's kind of almost forever. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. Would that were true. Anyway, this guy's reporting it as fake. These things as fake. I don't know if they're fake or not. This one's more. Well, I don't know if that's a fake quote, but this one is not. This one's obviously fake. Barbara Streisand is so smart. No, she's not a politician. No, strictly speaking, maybe a secondary something. Barbara Streisand is so smart she sonorously declaimed to. So I guess he's saying it's kind of like almost like a vocal delivery, sonorously declaimed to a Democratic Party national gala. So this is not some local thing in, St. Cloud, Minnesota, or something like that. National gala, a fake Shakespeare quote. Well, let's see if it was fake. She insisted. So people apparently asked her about it later. Was from Julius Caesar. So yeah, that's one of Shakespeare's 37, or on an alternative count, 36 plays. Some people wondered about Henry VIII. That might have been done in conjunction with someone else. And some of his other plays might have been as well. I don't exactly know much about William Shakespeare. So here's the quote. Get ready. Yeah, put on your seatbelts. Put on a helmet. And maybe get a mouth guard in between your teeth. Okay? Beware the leader who bangs the drums of war, in order to whip the citizenry into a patriotic fervor. Did you catch the iambic pentameter swing to that thing? Beware the who bangs the drums of war in order to whip the citizenry into a patriotic fervor. So she's insisting that's a quote from, I guess, a quote from Julius Caesar. You could say it's like a précis, but précis means it's precise, and it's poor. So here's what Stein says: poor Will must have been having an off day.
Because he didn't nail the rhythm.
No. William Shakespeare has a lot of passages, particularly in some of his later stuff, that are in prose, and it's actually better than his stuff he did in rhyme. Like his sonnets are really bad, and he did other poems as well, and they're generally bad. He did not handle rhyme well at all, and is heavily anthologized. Unjustifiably so. Hundreds of lefty websites are so smart that after the 2011 shootings in Tucson, so you're going, hey, which one is that? There's one a day. It's almost like vitamins in the United States, one a day. Anyway, 2011 shootings. This book was put.
Oh, you should explain that about William Shakespeare.
What about?
About how he wrote. Rhythmically.
You mean like the iambic pentameter?
Yeah.
That's da 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 da. So it's iamb is weak, strong.
Because I did not know that until you pointed it out, and I'd had to go through Shakespeare like everyone does in high school. I'd never noticed it.
And your teacher, however nice that teacher might have been,
didn't know it either, obviously. Yeah.
So iambic pentameter, it means meter, strictly speaking, in Greek means something like measure. You see how it's related. Maybe you can. Too bad for you. But at any rate, penta means 5. And it's cognate actually with the English 5, the German 5. So the Germans retain the N there in 5. Try saying that several times. And especially looking in the mirror, you'll probably start laughing. 5.
But perhaps this guy actually knew that.
Knew what?
Well, and that's why he said.
Oh, he'd know the quote, right?
Oh.
So I can vaguely recall it. I don't know, well, it's from Julius Caesar. I took Julius Caesar in grade 11. You would have taken the Shakespeare course or two. You were mentioning one, but I don't know which. Do you even remember? I took Julius Caesar with that.
Oh, I can't remember which years we took which. I took The Taming of the Shrew was one of them. Midsummer's Night's Dream was another one.
Oh, comedies, yeah.
I don't know. Oh, the Prospero's.
Oh, The Tempest. You remember the name? That's very impressive. Anyway, that one's almost a borderline comedy too.
But I think that one was in English the first year of when I went to the college. I think that was.
Oh, okay. There we go. Maybe that's why you got 3. I think I only had 2. But,
okay.
Maybe we did The Taming of the Shrew. Yeah, that's possible.
Oh, that one's a good one.
Like one for each year of high school. Anyway, that's pretty good. I've only run across one feminist who thinks anything of it, and that's actually Germaine Greer. He's a little bit of a revisionist. I don't like her views about Islam, but not bar territory. But anyway, she seemed to think it wasn't down on women and stuff like that.
I didn't understand why we had to study things. I was like, this isn't English. Why do we have to study things
that aren't
English?
Is, linguists
this is too old.
Linguists say it's modern English. And it's not right at the beginning of modern English. It's fairly close to the beginning of English. I gather it's not right at the beginning. So you can, you've read Chaucer now with me, and that's Middle English. And that's difficult to wade through. And then
you have to
English
do that aloud. You have to read it.
It helps. Old English is harder to learn than German is, because German has borrowings from French and Latin, and from English as well. So you have less trouble with vocabulary, but you're going to have trouble. Well, actually, you're going to have more trouble because it's easier to pick up the grammar in German. Because word position in sentence is important in German, but in Old English, Anglo-Saxon, it's called variously one or the other. It's not terribly important, and especially when you're dealing with poetry, it's stunningly difficult because you can't use word position to tell you what's happening. At any rate, so they all blamed it on Sarah Palin so the 2011 shootings in Tucson all blamed it on Sarah Palin. Oh man, how soon we forget. But she was a pretty forgettable character, or lack of character. Sarah Palin by using the same fake Sinclair Lewis quote from "It Can't Happen Here." When fascism comes to America, it'll be wrapped in the flag and carrying a cross. Wrapped in the flag, nationalism, and carrying a cross. In other words, something like crusading Christianity. No, it happens. That's not in It Can't Happen Here, or any other Sinclair Lewis novel. So I presume someone's checked or something like that by 2011. They should have been able to do a computer check. But again, I'm not, he might have got this all wrong, except for the William Shakespeare thing. I think I can vaguely recall the passage. She was just blabbing. But why quibble over the veracity of mere sentences? Liberals, and so it's different from liberals in Canada. Liberals are so smart, they teach a fake book in college. I regret to mention. So I mentioned that before in the previous podcast. So let's look at something happening out of Africa and why. One of the reasons I think why nifty, shifty, hefty lefties think that Heart of Darkness is racist. Yeah. Looking at page 137. Don't have my glasses with me. I should look at page 30.
I'll go get them.
I wouldn't worry. Well,
okay.
That might help if you can find them. Okay, so starting at 30. $3.17. Sorry. I'm not very good without my glasses. So recall H.G. Wells' Time Traveler. So Pauline and I have seen the movie together twice, and she's probably seen it at least once more when she was a kid. When he makes his first foray into the Morlock subterranean lair, so that's the Time Traveler, not H.G. Wells, he is impressed to find that, unlike the effete Eloi, they are not vegetarian. On the other hand, he's not clear exactly what large animal it is that they're roasting on the spit. And then the penny drops. Even now, so, spoiler alert, they're eating the Eloi. And then the penny drops. Even now, man is far less discriminating and exclusive in his food than he was. Far less than any monkey, he reflects. So that's H.G. Wells. His prejudice against human flesh is no deep-seated instinct. And so these inhuman sons of men, he doesn't call them sons of men. He calms himself and tries to look at it in a scientific spirit. So strictly speaking, this is the Time Traveler H.G. After all, they were less human and more remote than our cannibal ancestors of 3,000 or 4,000 years ago. Cannibal ancestors 3,000 or 4,000 years ago. So that's historical times, right? The pyramids were built, the big ones were built more than 4,000 years ago. Look it up if you don't trust me. I gather that for TV comics and newspaper cartoonists of your time, the mid-20th century, there were a few more reliable laughs, so let's say 1950, than putting a white man wearing a pith helmet, and that was pith, I wasn't swearing, a pith helmet in a big pot surrounded by dancing natives. Yet, oddly enough, there was virtually no empirical basis for such a persistent stereotype. The rest of the world had always believed that there was cannibalism in Africa, wrote Charles Onyango Oppo in the East African in 2003. So 8 years before this book was put out, 20 years before now. But there wasn't much hard evidence for it. Interesting. Yet by the early days of the 21st century...
Besides Kiru, I guess.
So this guy hasn't... See, this is someone called Charles Onyango Obo saying it, but there's that wasn't in Africa. His name's not Africa.
No, we were watching a documentary that was made not that long ago. It was something that my dad had recorded on the beta tapes. So it was then, that we were watching this documentary. It was a nature show. And where were they? Were they in?
Your dad was interested in
Papua New Guinea.
In Indonesia,
yeah.
Papua New Guinea. So
yeah, he wanted us to go on a mission there when I was young, and he was like, he had bought a book on Papua New Guinea and a book on Borneo, and I loved the one on Borneo, and I was like, let's go to Borneo, and I was 7 at the time, and he really wanted to go to Papua New Guinea. I didn't want to go. I don't want to go there.
It would have been exciting, huh?
Yeah. But we were watching this documentary so Dad was still interested in it, even when beta tapes were out and stuff like that. And he'd recorded this show from TV, and it was the guy he was going to see some tribal people, and they were he was saying they've said that they don't do cannibalism anymore, but it was very clear to the researcher that they still practiced it, because they told him all very in detail about what they do and stuff. Like, they still had all the recipes. They had, they knew everything about how they, so it was very clear.
This was the overweight anthropologist.
Yes,
right?
it was him, and he was very pro their culture and everything, but he said it's obvious that they're still doing it.
He would be dismissing away.
Yeah.
What he said about witch hunting, they still practice witch hunting.
Yeah.
He said that's their criminal justice system. No, that's a criminal injustice system.
Yeah.
Okay, got that straight?
Yeah.
It's not criminal justice. It's criminal injustice system.
Yeah, because if anybody said that about pilgrims burning witches,
oh my
God, that's not a criminal justice system,
it's
right?
a classic case of double standard.
Yeah.
And that's relatively modern day times, from when you were a kid.
Yeah.
I don't know how much has changed. So Kuru, it was happening, and there were anthropologists and nifty, shifty, hefty lefties, I think around into the 60s, that were denying that there was head hunting and eating of human flesh, including brains. They were denying it. And this guy who discovered the connection was being attacked by them. That's typical. They were actually witch hunting him, frankly. Anyway, yet by the early days of the 21st century, that's our century, keeping track, when the PC enforcers, are you a PC enforcer? Witch hunter. Would clobber you for even the, clobbering, oh, is that overdone? No, they won't clobber you. They'll just take your job away. For even the mildest evocation of the old cooking pot gag, cannibalism was flourishing. Mr. Onyango Obo, who was quoted earlier, had been reporting that the Congolese, so he's actually reporting that the Congolese liberation movement was slaughtering huge numbers of people and feeding the body parts to their relatives. In North Kivu, a group called Les Effaceurs, the Erasers, that's French, in case you didn't read. And I could have mispronounced it quite badly. Effaceurs. Had wanted to open up the province's mineral resources to commercial exploitation, and to that end it engaged in ethnic cleansing by cannibalism. Woohoo! That's this century, this millennium. The Congo Civil War raged for most of the first decade of this century, so that's just a few years previous to this. This book put out in 2001. Uncovered by CNN, so it raged. The Congo Civil War raged for most of the first decade of the century, uncovered by CNN and the New York Times for want of any way to blame it on George W. Bush. And that, to a large extent, is it, because how do you blame cannibalism on white folks? They will figure out some way.
What was it, that group of people that were trying to ask the UN for help because to protect them against cannibalism? Is that in there, or where is that?
We'll see. For want of any way to blame it on George W. Bush, and he's just using that as a blaming it on Americans, white people, Judeo-Christianity, so on and so forth. Among the estimated 6 million dead, many were eaten. The two parties to the conflict agreed on very little, except that pygmies make an excellent entree.
I shouldn't laugh. Poor pygmies.
It's tragicomic.
Yeah.
I've got a book called Pygmy Kitabu, or Kitabu. So that's an Arabic name. It means book. Kitabu, Kitabu. I'm not sure where the accent comes. And it was put out by a guy who was talking about how the Bantu, in the area that he was looking at, well, it was basically I think it's the Bantu people around there, had kept pygmies as their kind of like servants. But this guy was being clear, they were their slaves. And this was in the late 20th century. So both sides, okay, the two parties to the conflict agreed very little except that pygmies make an excellent entree. Both sides hunted them down as if they were the drive-through fast food of big game. Well, they're actually not that big game. Anyway, while regarding them as subhuman, so they had them as slaves, and slavery, the biggest slavers, biggest slave traders in the history of the world are indigenous African people. For almost all the European slave trade, they were trading their own African people to the Europeans, and for much of the Muslim slave trade, they were doing that too. They believed that if you roasted their flesh and ate it, you would gain magical powers. In return, the pygmies asked, Pauline was talking about this, the UN Security Council to recognize cannibalism as a crime against humanity. For all the good that did. The UN is a little club for dictators that allows the occasional democracy to be represented. So I don't know if the UN declared it a crime against humanity and or a war crime. If you haven't, UN, get on the stick.